Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to view is an excerpt or part of yesterday's live stream. I like to call it the meat and potatoes of the live stream because I just take out the part that is the message of that live stream so that people that did not have the time to dedicate an hour and a half to sitting there during the live stream can quickly get the message of what that live stream was. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what, the message is not all gloom and doom. Yes, we do have some hard times ahead of us. However, there is light at the end of the tunnel. When we come out of this dark winter, which is what we're going through right now, there is light at the end of the tunnel. We will be going back into spring, per se, from winter. So watch this video so that I can explain to you how it is that cycles work. When you study cycles, it lets you know what's coming in the future. Maybe not exactly, just like the cycles of the weather. Every year you have a spring, you have a summer, a fall, and a winter. Do they all correlate as far as having the exact same temperatures on the exact same dates? No. They are all different. Not one day is going to match the exact same day as far as temperature and all of that kind of stuff. Atmospheric pressure, rain, snow, as the exact day the year prior. But you are within that season. So for example, right now, if I say that in October of 2020, the U.S. was going through the fall, then it was going through the fall. But it doesn't necessarily mean that on October 21st of 2020, it was the exact same temperature as it is on October 21st of 2021. But we are within the same season. So although the seasons correlate, they don't repeat exactly. So what's to come in the next 10 or so years? It may be a little bit rougher than other seasons, right? Than other past generations had to go during the winter season of their generational cycle, or it may be a little bit better. But the good news is that at the end, we will turn into spring. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you very much for joining in. I hope that you get something out of this. God bless. All right, so here you can see that there are 4 turnings, and each turning, all right, each turning represents one season of a generational life, all right, of a person's life or a generation. The average generation is anywhere between 80 to 90 years. So each turning or each season, being that the 4th turning is winter, is considered winter, it's about 22 and a half, I would say, to 25 years. Anything like that. So it says here, in this era in which American institutional life is torn down and rebuilt from the ground up. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, what's going on right now? The institutions in our nation right now, if you can look at it, and you can just pick one, just pick the educational institution. Look at how our educational institution has been torn down from what it used to be to what it is today, to where you used to be able to send your child to school to learn how to read, write, do a little bit of science, and learn how to add and multiply, to where now not only are they not teaching them how to think, but they are teaching them what to think and putting onto them the ideology that they want to pass on to them. All right, so that's just one institution. We can talk about the banking institution as well. Look at how banking used to be, where we used to have honest money, and now the money everyone pretty much knows is fake and that it is unreliable. So that's just the first part. And the reason I'm reading this for you is to show you how everything that they say on this correlates to what's going on today. And this book right here, The 4th Turning, it wasn't written yesterday. It wasn't written a year ago. It was written about roughly 30 years ago or so. So it's not like they wrote it after it happened. What they did is they looked at history and realized that there's a correlation between generations and that there's actually a generational season that lasts from spring all the way through winter. Winter being the 4th turning. And this is what I think they're talking about, that it's going to be a dark winter. That this 4th turning, that the remaining time that we have in this 4th turning, in this cycle of this generation, that it's going to stay dark for the rest of the time, which takes us all the way to about 2030, 2032. So that's why I said when I talked to you all on my last video that it's no longer that we need to be prepared for a year or two. We need to be prepared for as long as possible, all right, for as long as possible, because we're going to need it. For those of you that don't know a gentleman by the name of Martin Armstrong, in my opinion, is like a genius, right? This gentleman, he developed a computer software program where it could predict the downfall of empires and the downfall of governments. And the government, our government, got onto this and realized that his predictions were like spot on. And they wanted him to give them that program, and he wouldn't do it. So he was put in jail for about 8 years on contempt. He was never charged with anything. He was just put in jail on contempt because he would not give up his creation to our government. At least that's how I understand it, right? That's how I understand that it happened. Well, even Martin Armstrong, who has no connections with the gentleman that wrote, or the gentleman that wrote this book, The Fourth Turning, even Martin Armstrong himself says that America will be in a downturn for the next 10 to 12 years. All right, so this is a second source that's saying the same thing, using something completely different than what the gentlemen who wrote this book are saying. So in my opinion, we are in dark winter. But that dark winter, ladies and gentlemen, does not represent this winter or next winter, but it represents the next decade to 12 years of America. So this is the time to prepare. I'll tell you what, I feel in a way bad that we have to prepare, but I feel very good that people are waking up to the fact that they need to prepare. Because I believe this. I believe that we are in the fourth turning from studying this book and looking back at history every 80 to 100 years, seeing how all of these things that it says here pretty much happened during all of those time periods, during the time that is specified for that specific turning. But I'm glad that we can see this so that we can prepare ahead of time. You know, I've always said that I think that the worst of the worst will reach around 2024, 2025. That's just my personal opinion. But we're in the fourth turning right now. We are in the dark winter right now. But we still have time to prepare. And as you can see, that time is running a little bit short. More and more countries are starting to fall. Look at Lebanon. Look at what's going on in Lebanon. I mean, Lebanon is a great example of how a government can literally strip you of all of your wealth overnight. Overnight, anyone who had money in the bank, it was gone. Gone. They couldn't take it out. And when they allowed them to start taking money back out of the bank, it was not even enough for them to buy food for the day. So things can turn on a dime. So if you're not prepping, ladies and gentlemen, if you're here for the first time, make sure that you pay attention. Make sure that you start preparing for what's coming here in the next 10 to 12 years. It's a slow grind, ladies and gentlemen, but there's hope. And at the end of this, you'll see that there is hope. One of the reasons I feel there is hope is because we can still prepare. We still have time to get ready for the harshest part of this cycle. And there's also hope because in the end, we will be in a new system. We will be in the spring of the fourth turning, which will be the first turning of the new generational cycle. So let's go ahead and finish reading on here. As you can see, it says, this is an area in which American institutional life is torn down and rebuilt from the ground up. Listen to this. Always in response to a perceived threat to the nation's very survival. Did you hear that? Always in response to a perceived threat to the nation's very survival. Now ask yourself what's been going on for the last couple of years, ladies and gentlemen. Civic authorities revives, so civic authority revives culture, meaning that the people will eventually be heard, all right? Cultural expression finds a community purpose and people begin to locate themselves as members of larger groups. In every instance, the fourth turning had eventually become new founding moments in America's history, refreshing and redefining the national identity. Ladies and gentlemen, in about the last 5 presidents or so, at least 2 or 3 of them, I remember saying something that I can paraphrase saying something like, we're going to change America, or we're going to change America's fiber. Pretty much meaning that we're going to change America to something that it was not when the founding fathers made this country or created this country. At least 2 or 3 of the last 5 presidents I've heard say something similar to that. All right? And here it says, in every instance, turnings have eventually become founding moments in American history, refreshing and redefining the national identity. Currently, this period began in 2008. So we're about halfway through the 4th turning right now, okay? And 2008 was a great time, the great financial crisis. All right, that's when the dark winter really started. It started for a lot of people who lost everything. All right, and now we're going through that same period again because we're going through the same business cycle all over again. Except this time, I think that instead of it being the regular 8 to 10 year business cycle, it's going to be the macro business cycle, which is an 80 to 100 year business cycle, which is going to be a very large downturn and will extend to around 2030. So here he's saying that this winter, right, that the 4th turning is going to extend to about 2030. If the past is any prelude to what is to come, as we contend, consider the prior 4th turning, which was kicked off by the stock market crash from 1929 and climaxed with World War II. Just as a 2nd turning reshapes our inner world, meaning our values, culture, and religion, a 4th turning reshapes our outer world, politics, economy, and empire. Ladies and gentlemen, doesn't that just make sense of what's happening right now? Politics, economy, and empire. Our politics couldn't be worse than they've ever been. Not that they've ever been good, in my opinion, but the economy, even though it's touted by the mockingbird media and by our politicians that the economy is doing well, I don't think anyone here would believe that the economy is doing well. And of course, we all know that America is an empire, and what always happens to empires, especially those that debase their currencies, right, and spend like drunken sailors. And he says, to be clear, the road ahead for America will be rough, but I take comfort in the idea that history cycles back, and the past offers a guide to what we can expect in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever heard me say Fibonacci? All right, the Fibonacci sequence, that is all about nature. And he finishes off by saying, like nature's 4 seasons, the cycles of history follow a natural rhythm or pattern. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what, everything that I read there, I can point to something that's happening now or something that's happened in the past in the last few years. And I think that you would agree with me that we are in what this gentleman calls the 4th turning, which is what I think they mean when they say that we're going to have a dark winter. The 4th turning is the winter part of a generational cycle. It's the winter season of a generational cycle. So when I say that you need to prepare, you need to continue to prepare. I would say that it's more important now than ever for you to have your preps in that stage where you're just filling in your gaps. I've often said that slow and steady wins the race. And if you don't have the means to go out there and prep up quickly, then by all means, slow and steady is how it's got to be. But the sooner that you can get prepped up, in my opinion, the better. Because we're going to have to be in that fill in the gap phase. That way we can be prepared at all times in case somewhere between now and the end of this cycle, which will be around 2030, 2032, if something even worse happens where we can't fill in the gaps, we all know that we're going to be good for several months to a year. And hopefully within that time, we'll have some sort of respite from whatever other crisis occurred to keep us from filling in the gaps to go ahead and catch up.